Hi there. Forgive me, I've lost my voice. Actually, I've got it back. So I'm celebrating today by speaking to you about our mural. Our amazing mural. It's an exquisite and huge piece of mid-century modern Americana. It's rare beyond measure, not only to us as a congregation, but to all Unitarians and to the history of art and architecture even. It's also imperfect and a reflection of who we are and who we have been, and thus a challenge to be more of who we are. So when I was asked to provide this piece to you about my involvement with the mural, I was asked to talk about what it was like to see this mural for the first time, walking into the church. Many of you don't know me. I've been gone a lot lately. My name is Rachel Prenz, and I'm an architect here now in Albuquerque, and I've only been here for about 7 months. But well before I ever got to Albuquerque, I knew about this mural. I have a girlfriend named Amy Sammons who's a sometimes visitor of the church. And whenever we'd come down to visit her, she would tell me everything that was going on. She was excited to have another Unitarian friend to share her ideas with. She was like, oh my gosh, we got a new minister. Oh my gosh, we're gonna get a new building. And all of this was all in the dream stage when I was hearing about it. She's like, Rach, you've got to see this mural. It's really unbelievable. In fact, you should be a part of it. You're a historic architect. That's what you do. And so she got me really fired up about it. And she's deeply connected to this piece of art, and she kind of, I don't know, I think she thought I might be a good steward for helping it get moved. She loved the symbols, and she knew that it was a treasure, and a piece by Alexander Gerard that's very rare, very rare. He's only ever done 2 of these pieces. The other one's at a John Deere factory. I know, kind of funny. She'd tell me that I needed to be involved. I better be involved. We just need to move down here and hurry it up, why don't you? She planted the seed, and every time I saw her, she would tell me more about all the latest developments that she had heard through the grapevine. Several months later, when my mother-in-law's beautiful home became available, my husband and I took the opportunity to get out of Taos and come to Albuquerque in search of opportunities. I've been very connected with the TED organization down here, and I loved the community, and I really wanted to be in a little bit bigger town. The first thing that we did when we made that decision, or the first thing I did, was contact the church to see when services were and if I could be of use. So that first day when I walked into the church, I was already connected. I had chatted via email with Christine and Angela, who had been really gracious with me, and several of the members of the committee, and I had already chatted. So seeing it wasn't just a, wow, that's a really cool piece of architectural art moment. It was a, hey, this is important, and it could be important to me moment. It felt much bigger. And being involved with this mural move has turned out, in fact, to be a pretty big deal for me. My first task was to do some research. I basically studied everything I could about Alexander Gerard. I'm one of those dig deeper and find the connections and everything kind of people, like most Unitarians are. So I went looking to see what I could unearth. I spent some serious time in the Special Collections Library and even looked at the tissue-thin sheets of paper with delicate, deliberate pencil strokes that Harvey Hochschauer had used to design this original building. For those that don't know, Hochschauer was an MIT graduate who worked with legendary architects including Mies van der Rohe and I.M. Pei. And he was a former employee of Gerard's. When he designed the sanctuary in 1964, he called Gerard in to design the altarpiece. These 5,000 wood tiles were collected and harvested from abandoned barns, purchased from ranchers in the Jemez Mountains that were sited by his son Marshall while he was at horseback riding camp. The two, the father and son, had hand disassembled each barn, starting with the roof, and stacked each board between sheets of cardboard so that it would retain its original condition and original finish. And then they would load all that onto trailers and haul it down. The wood was cut into 3-inch squares by a church member and installed by Gerard's team in about 3 days. The colors and the 22 symbols are original to their reclaimed condition and include tar scar through sheathing on the dark places that look like tiger stripes, and then stained and painted details. And then I made appointments with the Folk Art Museum in Santa Fe to see the Gerard collection of folk art, which was interestingly housed in a building designed specifically for the purpose by our own Harvey Hoschauer. Gerard had done all the exhibits and had broken every rule in exhibit design, and I wanted to see what made this guy tick. So I also went to the Compound Restaurant in Santa Fe, which Gerard also designed. And as soon as they found out anybody was looking, people came out of the woodwork. They wanted to know about Gerard. They wanted to know about our mural. Being one of the last intact vestiges of his work, our mural is not only valuable as a piece of art, it's also connected to these other 2 buildings. And I'll tell you about that in the next piece. What we see here in the mural background, so I'm going to show you. Like, all in here, not the symbols, actually is literally connected to those 2 remaining pieces of Gerard work. In the Compound Restaurant in Santa Fe, there's a set of doors that lead out to a back seating area that has this exact background. And at the Folk Art Museum, there are displays in the back right corner of the Gerard collection that have that wrapping around the base. So it's really, really, truly connected to this place and Gerard's influence in New Mexico. There's a thread here, and it connects us to the past, to the present, and from people from many different walks of life. Kind of like what our mural does for the church. In the order of service, it says, I was supposed to talk about myth and legend, but when I sat down to write this, it came out as a piece more about synchronicity and connection. Moving this monumental artwork is a monumental task. How on earth can we move these 5,000 individual tiles from one place to the next and get it together right? Somehow I lucked out and landed in Albuquerque right when I could help out the most. Also, when I needed it the most. I was feeling lost from my spiritual path. I felt like there was something missing, much as there are traditions missing from the mural. And I was in need of a spiritual home, kind of like the mural needs a new home. And like me arriving when the team could use me, synchronicities kept showing up. As I was doing the research, I was introduced to the head of conservation at New Mexico Antiquities who had been dealing with Gerard's techniques every day at the Folk Art Museum. He offered that if there was anything to do that he could do to help, to let him know. So while I had his attention, I started asking questions. What can we do to attach the mural tiles to the new wall? How can we remove the tiles that fell off and reattach with Gorilla Glue? Do we need to sand off the adhesive residue once the wood tiles are removed, or can we just leave it? He freely gave us the information we needed to make things work, made suggestions for the right materials to use to preserve this important piece of architectural art, and offered to help us figure out what issues came up when we actually started taking it down, because as we all know, it gets more complicated as soon as you take it apart. And then we got connected to Todd Oldham's office. He's a famous designer, and he had just worked with an author named Kyra Coffey to do a compendium of Gerard's work, which, by the way, includes a section on the mural. It's a book about this thick and feels like 200 pounds. They checked their archives to see if there were any documents in there, and there really weren't. But they also connected us to Gerard's son, Marshall, who we had met somewhere along the way, but I didn't know how to get a hold of him. And Marshall became an ally to the process and offered that when it was time, he and his grandkids would show up if they were in the States and see if they could help out if they could. So we took all the information we collected and we prepared a scope of work, which of course we'll finesse as things go. But before we got to the move itself, we knew the first step we needed to take was to stabilize the mural for when they were building the demolition. And we developed a plan for that. When asked, volunteers from the congregation showed up, and they made it happen. We marked the rows and the columns on the walls. That's the writing you can see, that's our work. And took off every single loose tile and marked it with its row and column number. So if the vibration of demolition knocked them out, we know where to put them back. And then we took photographs of all the different symbols, and so we could try to put it back together in the best way we could. Then we knew we'd need about 160 boxes, because that's how many columns there are. And we put that in the scope of work. I even included a picture of a Sterilite box in the scope of work. And a few weeks later, my friend Tony Lynn, who works at an optics firm, put up on his Facebook a picture of a boatload of Sterilite boxes that his firm was getting rid of. And all you had to do was show up and get them. So I drove over there and got them. And they're in my guest room right now. I was like, score, save $800. So the plan not only started taking shape, but the means to make the plan happen also started showing up. With the support of the congregation sponsoring tiles, we'll hopefully be able to hire a professional to manage the move, and maybe, if we're really lucky, raise enough money to develop a maintenance plan and an endowment that will allow us to keep it preserved for the long term. It all came together so beautifully. It was a thing to behold, synchronicities upon synchronicities. And for me, I got kind of an instant church family in our little group, one that often takes years to build. So when I saw the mural for the first time, and when I see it every time, it kind of feels a little bit like I'm coming home. When I was a little girl, my grandmother made me a quilt that I ended up carrying everywhere I went, well into my 20s, all over the world, even when I lived in Europe. It was never perfect, and now it is absolutely threadbare and tattered. I look at the mural, which seems an awful lot like a quilt to me, and I think of how it too is imperfect. One of the symbols is just plain wrong, and it doesn't represent what we thought it did. However, it does reflect our intention to do our best with the information that we have. I like that reminder. The mural also has a tendency to spit out some of the tiles from time to time. And they've been put back in wonky ways. But life is like that. It's always being rearranged. And I like that reminder too. I asked my gram if she could make me a new quilt, like the one that wore out, and she did. And the truth is, I was a little disappointed. Please don't tell her that. There was something missing. And I think it was the connection to so much of my life. When we moved the mural, I want to make sure we put it back together right. Because like my old worn out quilt, I'm going to cry. There's comfort in being reminded that we are perfectly imperfect. And also comfort in preserving something that's remained by our sides, witness to our tragedies and our triumphs. For sure, the mural has served that purpose for this congregation, and hopefully when we are done, it will do so for many generations to come. This year has been a really hard one for me personally. I don't know if it was the apocalypse, or as I call it, the non-apocalypse, or the election, which kind of felt like the end of the world, or moving, or me thinking that I was moving to Albuquerque and then immediately being called back to Taos and all over for work and never feeling like I really had a place to land. But this project and the amazing group of people I've got to work with to help make it happen has helped to restore my faith and keep me going. Every time I opened an email, it was like I was being called home. And I'm enormously thankful for that. And I know that for as long as I'm here going to this church, I'll be sitting out there in the audience with you, looking at each of my tiles that I sponsor, knowing that I was and am part of something awesome.
In case you're not finished, I'll sound a little. So I'm Carol Bonda. I have been a member of this church since the 1980s. And I grew up in Albuquerque. My family has been in Albuquerque since the early 1890s. So the Sandias are just a part of my life. If I don't see the Sandias, it's just not a good day. And then when I joined the church and I would come to church, it was like the mural became my Sandias. If I don't see the mural, something's wrong. I guess the Sandias and the mural are my security blanket. So I was interested, when they said we were going to get the new sanctuary and that we might move the mural. And they started having last spring forums and gatherings in the social hall to discuss the mural and the new sanctuary. And so I thought, well, I should go and see what they were talking about. Each table kind of brainstormed about the mural. And the man sitting next to me said, oh no, we cannot keep the mural in the new sanctuary. It's a new sanctuary, everything has to be new. And my mind started doing the devil's advocate thing. I thought, oh yeah, what could we do if everything had to be different and new? So I thought, well, we could get rid of the mural. We could sell it. We could sell it to the Folk Art Museum. They might pay big bucks. Or we could chop it up. We could take the different symbols, just put them around in different places around the campus and in the church. And I even got this crazy idea that we could put part of it on a ceiling. That kind of pushed me back into reality. And I said, okay, I think I better join a team to preserve the mural, because that is what I really want. And so I joined the Sanctuary Building Aesthetic team, and it has just been a wonderful experience. So now we want to talk about some of the symbols on the mural and what we're going to do with them.
Okay. First, I'm Shara Atkinson, and we need to give credit where credit is due. The descriptions of the symbols we will be using come from several sources. The main amount of information is gathered from several sermons our senior minister, Christine Robinson, has given over the years. Additional information is taken from the Unitarian website, our Unitarian website, which lists pictures of all the symbols and descriptions. And of course, we need to thank Jamie McHenry for all the work producing the fantastic images of the mural that we've used during our Move the Mural campaign.
Okay, with all those accolades out of the way, we're going to learn more about the mural and the more obscure symbols on the mural. So we need your help in locating some of these symbols. We'll read a description of the symbol and ask you to locate the symbol. Don Lunt will be in the audience, and with a microphone, and so please wait for her to come to you when you want to tell us where this symbol is.
As Rachel pointed out in her talk, the mural is an amazing work of art that we, or most of us, treasure. Depicting the symbols of the world's religions was a huge task and is presented with Alexander Girard's artistic interpretation. Since a mural is a reflection of the world's religious symbols, there are a lot of crosses, which can be problematic in a Unitarian sanctuary. Unitarian Universalists tend to look at the cross as evoking such images as the human form, a tree, a ship's mast, and so on as a common symbol of humanity, rather than the historical symbol of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so the first symbol we're going to locate is the Greek Orthodox cross. It has 3 branches, and tradition states that the cross of the crucifixion included a footrest and a sign above Jesus' head bearing the letters INRI, King of the Jews. Does anybody know where that symbol is?
Anybody?
I'm picking you.
It's exciting. That's an easy one. It's right here. It's the green and the black just to the above the chalice.
That's why we started with an easy one. Now, the Roman cross is a Roman cross evokes the crucifixion of Jesus Christ in Christian teachings, and it has equilateral legs. So does anybody know where the Roman cross is? No. No. We'll go through all of them. It's the yellow and white cross. Oh, I did the wrong thing. I was wrong on my description.
Okay, the next one is the Ankh, which is the Egyptian hieroglyph for life, a combination symbols for Osiris, male, and Isis, female, the union of 2 principles, heaven and earth.
This is another easy one.
Okay.
Okay, the off-center cross, the circle with the off-center cross was the Universalist symbol. It's not an old symbol dating back only to the 1950s. And Alexander Girard was a devout Roman Catholic and did not care for this symbol. He tried to get the building committee to drop it, but they were adamant he did not do so. He got in the last artistic symbolic word. Does anybody know where it is? Right. And the Universalist off-center cross is smack dab in the middle of the mural.
It's artist license. The Chi-Rho, or the labarium, is one of the most ancient Christian symbols. It is the first 2 letters of Christ's name in Greek, superimposed on a Latin cross. It is said to have appeared to the Roman Emperor Constantine in a dream, after which he converted to Christianity on the spot. Now we all know some Greek.
Right, it's behind the piano. And now you do know Greek. Our next 2 symbols come from the Zoroastrianism, which I think is a very funny sounding name. And somehow I'd always been putting in an extra syllable in that word. Okay, did anybody watch Harry Potter's movie last night? Aren't any kids here? That's the Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. And we have a goblet of fire on the mural. Does anybody know where it is? All right. And the Zoroastrians are dualists who believe that the powers of light are eternally at war with the powers of darkness, and that it's the duty of good persons to align themselves with the powers of light. The underlying mythos of the Star Wars universe and Harry Potter call on this.
Oh, this next one's too easy. Sun. This is an ancient symbol, but this version comes from the Zoroastrianism, an ancient religion in our world. Its priests are called magi, and you will probably remember it was the magi who followed the star to see the babe in Bethlehem. The next one's hard.
Yes. Okay, we expect mathematicians and the engineers in the audience to know this. The mandorla. Does anybody know where the mandorla is?
The penguin. Yeah, maybe.
Anybody? Between the circles. You're cheating. You know. The mandorla is a very powerful symbol, is the shape created at the intersection of two circles. It is a seed, leaf, or fish-shaped form. It is sacred to goddess-based faiths and is also sometimes known as the gate of life. It also symbolizes the meeting of opposites and the truth that comes when what seems like opposites or forces intersect. We're going to go ahead and skip.
Okay.
Okay, now, did you know there's one tile in the over 5,000 tiles on the mural that's not original? How do we know? Because the guy who lost it substituted another piece of wood. But we're not going to tell you where it is. You need to come to the top, I'm sorry. You need to come to the our gala tomorrow night at 5:30 to learn that tile's location. Thank you for your patience, and we hope you learned something about the mural.